when Professor Eagleson, who's here tonight, let's give a big round of applause for Robert Eagleson. And also for Professor Peter Butt, who has just retired, a wonderful Australian scholar. Now, these two guys, one a linguist and one a lawyer, and boy, you know, Peter's area of law, that's not generalities. You know, you can't just get up and make a funny speech about Peter's area of law. That's hard yards, that's land law. You don't mess with land law unless you've got a Mabo case or something like that, and then you've got to mess with it. And then you've got to mess big with it, and you've got to follow it up with Wick and other cases too. But Peter and Robert, we owe a lot to you, and then I began through them to have the great privilege to meet Joe Kimball and to read his writings and to understand this is not just a little effort of a few clever people down here in Australia. This is a world movement to try to get things and explain things in the law more simply, both in the decisional law and in the statute law and the formal written law, which is now the most important part of the law. And it's been very interesting for me in my career as a judge, going up the slippery pole and taking various steps and seeing the law from different angles, to have had this privilege. And I've never been able to explain to myself why so many lawyers and even more judges are hostile to the movement of the people in this room. Not to put too fine a point on it, there are very distinguished judges who are hostile to what is being suggested. How can that be? I mean, how can you be hostile to endeavours to explain things simply, clearly, shortly, directly, practically, effectively? I just don't understand it. But this undoubtedly exists. Some of them are very noticeable because they'll say it in their reasons. Professor Kelly took a big part in the drafting of the Insurance Contracts Act, which for the first time brought all the laws relating to insurance contracts together in Australia in a single federal statute. And in doing that, he had to study all the insurance contracts in order to get basic principles in the insurance contracts, the standard contracts. And that got him going on plain language, and that got him involved in the Australian movement. And when he became the head of the Victorian Law Reform Commission, it got him concerned with this movement in the States. So these developments happened and they really became quite important, but some people hated it. They hated it. And they would they'd leave no opportunity unturned if ever we got the Insurance Contracts Act before us, which we did from time to time, to be highly critical of it, or the Evidence Act, and the ways in which attempts had been made to express things simply, clearly. They were condemned and derided and disparaged. And I must say, I never quite understood what is motivating this. And if we could get an analysis of what motivates this, well, we might know better the target, an important target. The mood and spirit and attitude of the law does tend to trickle down the whole hierarchy. I'm afraid that's the way it operates. That's the realpolitik. So if we could find out what is the reason for this hostility, we'd be on a very important issue, because we hope it'll change, but I'm just not too sure, because it's hard to change things that are very deeply settled. However, that is one challenge that I wanted to address to your mind tonight. Why is there this hostility? It's suggested that it's because lawyers, even if they themselves like to see simple and clearer language, don't want to lose their so-called appearance of professionalism and their appearance of doing a special and unique job. And that might be one thing. Another, I think, is the tendency, even in the common law, maybe especially in the common law, to hide values and to pretend that the judges are on automatic pilot. It's just the law that they're giving effect to. And if the judge had a creative role, then they would be judicial activists, and we can't have that. It's very interesting, in the last week, I saw as I came to work this morning at 6 a.m, I saw a sign on the Channel 7 place in Martin Place, "The Queen opens new Supreme Court UK." And it is true that in the last few days, the Queen has opened the new Supreme Court. The House of Lords and the committee, the appellate committee of the House of Lords, which was the English highest court for centuries, has gone as from the 1st of October. And they have a new court called the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom. And the judges of that court are no longer the law lords, they're now the justices of the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom. So it's a very historical change. But the only thing that the Times newspaper really commented in its news item on the opening ceremony was that the only woman justice of the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom, Baroness Hale, Brenda Hale, was wearing a hat. Isn't that pathetic? Don't you find the infotainment media of today truly pathetic? The great Times newspaper. Who is the owner of the Times newspaper?
Some American.
Yes, well, and the other thing is, and this is more deep and serious, that in the appointment of the judges of the Supreme Court, they have moved away from the politicians appointing them, and they now are moving towards a committee of judges appointing the judges. Very bad move, in my opinion. For all the faults of politicians appointing judges, it's the one link with the legitimacy of democracy, and it means that you get over time changing values. Values are very important in the business that judges, and particularly judges of a final court, make. And if we pretend that it's all on automatic pilot, that it's all objective, that there is no room for the value system, then we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. And it's important that we should be truthful about these things, because that will help us to be much more candid and honest in the way in which we address the issues of the law and the expression of the law.